Did you guys watch the video that was in that article? Okay, so I actually watched this video 3 or 4 times to make sure I heard him correctly, but at one point he says,
"The pixels are finer than Gal Gadot's,"
and it bleeps out, and I was like, this product is dead to me. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was one of those when people say the AV industry does not have a sexism and misogyny problem. Point number 1 already. We're not even at InfoComm.
Yeah. On this episode of AVWeek, we take a look at some serious public AV fails. 16K is coming, or actually is here, and consumer security in the commercial industry. All that and more next on AVWeek.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is AVWeek, episode 616, recorded Friday, June 9th, 2023. Dollars and cents. This is AVWeek, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I am your host. With us to discuss the news and information we have gathered this week, a couple of really great new folks and a elder statesman of the AV industry. First and foremost, Britt Yenser. Britt is from Moravian University. Welcome, ma'am.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Britt has also started here in the last couple of months a fantastic podcast, not exclusively higher education folks, but a lot of them have been on, so you check that out. We'll talk about that in a second. Jennifer Weaver. Jennifer is from our friends over at Starin, and we feel sorry for her because she works with Chris Netto. Welcome, ma'am.
I do, thank you, and Chris has been so wonderful. Thank you for having me.
How much did he pay you to say that?
Lots.
I am certain. And last but not least, one of the elder statesmen of the AV industry, Mr. Bradford Benn from Advisist. Welcome, sir.
Thank you for having me. You're a pleasure for me to be here. And Jennifer, wait until you have Chris in your vehicle when you pick him up at the airport. It's a whole new Chris Netto. That's all I'm going to say. And Britt, it's great to see the Lehigh Valley represented from my old stomping grounds. So, and Tim, you still need a haircut, to quote Matt.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm just jealous you have hair.
That's why I keep doing it, bud. As long as I can grow this, I think I'm going to. I think that's going to be my this is my flex. I can't grow a beard, but I can do this.
Yeah, that's Tim not shaving for, 10, 12 years now?
Yeah.
Yeah. But my brain needs cooling because it's a little more powerful than Tim's.
And mine does not. All right. First story comes to us from our friends over at My Tech Decisions. The Federal Trade Commission, easy for me to say, FTC, has filed a complaint against Ring, the popular home security company, alleging that the company engaged in poor security practices and improperly accessed users' private videos. FTC claims that Ring failed to provide adequate safeguards, leading to unauthorized access to customers' videos by company employees. Furthermore, the complaint highlights instances where Ring granted inappropriate access to its employees and failed to implement basic security measures. Bradford, this is not the first time we have talked about Ring on this program. I don't know that it will be the last. I am not a fortune teller, but it's very possible that it might not be the last. This was posted on My Tech Decisions because there are a number of universities and, quite frankly, a number of commercial installations where they're leveraging a lot of these consumer-facing devices like video doorbells, right, for security. Talk for a second about some of the dangers of using consumer security, right, or consumer network gear or consumer-facing devices in a commercial higher ed application, Bradford.
I do want to add one little twist. It doesn't matter if it's consumer or pro. All video recording and audio recording and voice assistants and all these things all have the same little problems. Ring happens to have the problem because how many people beside me and Josh Schrago will read through the end user license agreement to understand what's happening?
Yeah.
So there is that. But the big thing is the challenge is people think, oh, I can do this with a Ring doorbell at home. Here's all that happens. I just put it in at my office in the school because Ring doorbells are now available wirelessly.
Yep.
but without looking at, okay, what are their security practices? Everyone thinks Amazon, AWS, it's all safe. Yes, when you pay for AWS service, that is very safe. When you pay for Ring service and you read through the whole policy, that's a whole nother thing. But we have the same issue with Samsung smart displays. We have the same issue with these little devices, Android especially because of their open garden versus the walled garden. The whole thing is more of the, before installing a commercial unit, make sure that the trade-offs have been looked at. What the quality is, what the data safety is, what all of those things are. Because to be honest, this could just as easily be a very secure pro-level access control system that had rogue employees or had poor security. So it's not actually the consumers. It's just that Ring is so prevalent and become the Kleenex of video doorbells. And by Kleenex, I mean it's a facial tissue. It's not Kleenex. Kleenex is the brand. But that's what Ring's become. And the fact that it's Amazon, it's just one of these, okay, this is something to be aware of. Now, as for higher ed, there's all sorts of issues with student privacy and sensors and room monitoring and all of that stuff that still has to be discussed. And you have the same issues in any corporate environment. The example I use is if you go to a concert, a sporting event, a theme park, even a movie theater, and you read the back of the ticket and you look at that really fine print and you see what it says, it's a license to do all these various things, including using your picture, etc. And that's just the exact same thing that this is. Now, I will update a little bit. Ring and Amazon actually today agreed they're going to pay the fine. That happened earlier this morning, so they have, in fact, paid it. But I think the bigger story is no matter what technology, what brand, what company, what anything you use, you need to look at what the privacy is and the safeguards, because Experian and credit scores and all these other things have all these great security things in place in their commercial, and they still have breaches. So I don't think it's a residential problem. I will say using residential and commercial, you can look at the duty cycle and all that type of stuff, but that doesn't really apply to doorbells.
All right, Jennifer, how do we get the clients, the folks that are purchasing these, to get them to take security more seriously then?
And I've done this even before I started working with Starin. I was an integrator, and when when my customer was telling me, well, I want the display that's from BrandSmart, or I want this consumer grade product that's going in a professional environment, it's not always what they think. They're looking at dollar, right? They're looking at how much money they're spending. I think that's part of what's going on here is the fact that Ring is an inexpensive product. I have them in my home. Now as a consumer, I'm questioning, is it something that I want to have now in my home,
Yeah.
So they've got to understand that there's always going to be a breach of something regardless of what it is. But if you are a professional environment, whether it's corporate America, higher ed, if it's not going in your home, you've got to really think about what's going to happen on the back end. Just because it's inexpensive and it's working in your home doesn't mean that inexpensive should be working in your office environment. I think you just have to talk them up and really get them to understand. And not that you want to throw out to a professional environment or corporate customer or higher ed university this article, but it might be beneficial. It's knowledge, it's education, and it's awareness.
Yep.
And I think if you do that and then they still decide, you kind of just wash your hands of it and go, well, I gave you the information you needed. And if they made their own decision, then you can't control it.
Britt, I used to live where you are now, right? In higher education, making sure that having conversations with the dean of this, that, and the other, or the president of the college, and like Jennifer just said, a lot of times they make decisions based on dollars and cents as opposed to common sense. How do you have conversations with colleagues? How do you have conversations with the ultimate decision makers to say, look, guys, this is not security minded. This is not security focused here. We need to have a different decision.
I think to Jennifer's point, and like you said, a lot of it comes down to the cost. And so you have to explain, and I like to use a combination of like we're talking it through, but there's also visuals. I put together a lot of like spreadsheets and charts and text to like, so they have something to reference and it becomes a little bit more digestible for them and to show, yes, you can receive this product at this price point, but I think most people understand you get what you pay for. So if you can really highlight for people, this is the price point, but this is what you are really getting. And you could be opening yourself up to these security risks or these particular dropout issues or whatever the issues are with the product at that price point. That does help to sway a decision. And at the end of the day, like any AV solution, the first step is to consider what the end user need really is. So when I go into those conversations, I want to make sure I know what is it that you're trying to accomplish with this so that I can show you, like, here's the consumer product you found. Maybe here's the pro AV product that does a similar thing or does what you want it to do. And here are the pros and cons of these products.
And really quickly before we move on to the next one, Jennifer, Britt, you made a good point there. Here's the commercial, or here's the professional version of that. Sometimes that's not available yet, and I'll reference back to the Apple TV and the ability to wirelessly send video. At the time it came out, there was not a comparable solution. Now, at the time it came out, Bradford,
I'm going to disagree a little on that.
Okay, well, I'm going to go to the ClickShare, right? The barcode ClickShare was the first widely accepted, widely available, popular solution to wirelessly send video in a commercial environment. Now, you could say that there might have been a one-off from somebody, and Bradford worked for Harman for 325 years, so they may have had something at the time that I'm not thinking of. But you do have to have a little bit of grace, I guess, is if what they want to do from the consumer world isn't available yet, then what was available, Bradford?
Well, I wasn't going to have that argument because that can go down an ugly rabbit hole, but I was going to follow up on something that Britt said and also a question you asked of how do you convince the higher ups that not to do consumer and all the privacy rules. I'm not going to say this is dirty pool. This is knowing the playing field well. You ask them to ask their insurance company of what's their liability if there is a data breach. And that often changes the discussion. And that happens on all sorts of stuff. When I had a client who wanted to put a voice control system from a major shopping company into their conference room. And my direct answer to them was no. Here's all the reasons I don't think you should do it. And by the way, what's your insurance company say? They have no voice control in the entire building as a result of that. Wow. Because they're a bank and they deal in, not public stuff, and the insurance company won. It's kind of funny the way that works.
It is. All right. Next story from AV Magazine. I'm just going to say this flat out. There's a 16K display on the market. That's the story. 16K, kids.
Is there 16K content?
That's the first question, Jennifer.
How far is the viewing angle? Because I need a bigger house to watch something.
You do need a bigger house. All right. So BOA, is the manufacturer who unveiled it at Display Week. 110-inch, 16K display. It quote unquote promises an unprecedented level of visual immersion. No kidding, it's 16K. Jennifer, you're right. Let's start with that. Where's the content and where's it coming from?
Well, where's all the 4K content still? Not everything.
Not even we're even talking about 8K. Yeah, where's the 4K content?
Right. And I've been in the AV industry 16 years. I was a high school math teacher previously to that. And I'm sure Britt sees this at university levels. the stuff that's going on there isn't 4K. They're still doing PowerPoint presentations. They're still writing on chalkboards.
They're still doing PowerPoint presentation in 4.3.
They're still using VGA cables. That's all
They
I'm going
are.
to say.
I remember all of that and wish that would still go away. But yes, it's still a thorn in everyone's side, I think. But my concern, I don't know if it's a concern, but it is a concern. This is going to come out. It's going to be amazing. It's going to look great. And it looks great because they had somebody create the content in 16K, just like somebody created the content in 4K. So, yay. It's maybe at a movie theater, maybe some amazing digital signage. I think it's going to have a unique application.
Okay.
I also think it's one of those that says, hey, look what we potentially can do. And now we're not going to hear about it maybe for another couple years.
All right. Britt, what, I mean, higher ed, there are some applications, and I still hear the argument in the back of my brain about 4K for higher ed. Well, we could, medical applications, medical training, stuff like that. We're not kidding. I mean, higher ed still uses VGA. The old college I used to work for still has VCRs because there are some professors who won't let go of those tapes. What are we doing with 16K?
We're not doing anything with 16K.
Okay.
Just not at this time. Like Jennifer said, there's really no content available for that. So, I mean, I could see the potential applications of like digital signage, maybe especially in the high profile buildings, like an admissions building, for example, or a union building. You know, digital, like really high quality digital signage could go a long way. And to your point, Tim, like sure, for an analytical decision making situation and a medical school, like fine, that would be super cool. But again, I just don't think the content exists right now. Also, I don't know, did you guys watch the video that was in that article? Okay, so what I found really interesting was, first of all, they seem to really pitch this TV as for home use in that video, where they were like, oh, it has handles on it, so when you move, you can move it. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this is not for your house. And then later, I actually watched this video 3 or 4 times to make sure I heard him correctly. But at one point, he says the pixels are finer than Gal Gadot's, and it bleeps out. And I was like, this product is dead to me. Thank you so much.
Yes. Yeah, that was one of those when people say the AV industry does not have a sexism and misogyny problem. Point number 1 already. We're not even at InfoComm.
Yeah. Well, I doubt that this product will be at InfoComm. Bradford, you can take this a couple different ways. I do want to hear from you though on transport, right? Okay. We've kind of killed. There is no content for 16K.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that a little bit.
Okay, there's not a whole lot of content for 16K.
I'm going to go with there's not a whole lot of use for it, but I have design systems at 32K and bigger because theme parks and 100-foot wide system using multiple 4K streams, it's a huge video wall that is at that high of a resolution. So 16K is not out
There is a
of the
vast
question.
difference between 100 feet and 100 inches.
That's what I'll agree with. But like at a sports book in the Hilton, a huge 16K display, great. Now but 103-inch 16K display, your eyes cannot physically resolve that. And if you sit far enough, you have to either sit so far away that it looks appropriate, or sit so close so you can see the pixels. And you can't do it. Now, your next question is, how do you get the content to it?
How do you transport that?
So there's a couple ways. So if you look, and in full disclosure, I used to work for Harman, which was purchased by Samsung. They had the product called The Wall, which still exists. I've worked with them on their digital cinema products. I'm not going to violate any non-disclosure agreements. You guys can, and girls and people and cyborgs can all look this up however you want. A lot of times, there is no transport. The content lives in the device, in the display, in the output, just because a hard drive is cheaper.
Okay.
Yes, you have to go physically change it, but it's the only way to get consistent streaming to it and consistent content to it. And it also gives you security of your content not being stolen, because as soon as you stream it, see Ring Video, someone can steal it. There's all sorts of things about cinema. Now, in terms of content, it sounds silly to say, oh, you just bind 4 12G SDI connectors together, but literally that's what you would do. It's a video wall at that point.
Yeah.
It's a huge amount of bandwidth, and I'm not sure you're going to get the resolution. Now, I will say 16K for content creation and 8K for content creation and capture, like for cameras. Can you imagine watching the Bears in a 16K, recording of it? What's great is you'd be able to zoom in on the one player who's any good, who was actually the water boy or water person on the bench filling the water cups. But that's where that type of resolution makes sense, is in the content capture, so you can do the digital zooms. Yeah. But even at 103 inches, you're hard-pressed to see between 4K and 8K. And the fact that people are using this as, ooh, this is 4K resolution, I'm like, you can't see a pixel. You're not really getting it. When I was at Harman, we made a pixel-for-pixel video wall of 4K on a 5mm pitch. And Tim, I know you've seen it because you were at the Experience Center. What was it, 40 feet tall?
Yeah.
It was big, and you had to be a little ways away to see it so that all the pixels didn't resolve in. It's, at some point, you're going beyond what is practical and the human eye can see and ingest. Now, if they had a 16K 100-foot system or 16K 20-foot system, be great for a network operations center or command and control or AutoCAD drawings or NASA when they're launching space stuff, but I don't see it in any place that's not willing to spend $1 million on just a display.
All right. Final story comes from our website. A recent incident involving a scoreboard failure during a New York Mets game. I'm sorry, Gina Sansevero, but it couldn't have happened to a nicer team. It's raised concerns about vulnerability. Gina's a big Mets fan. Vulnerability to the sports venue technology. The malfunction which resulted in a blank scoreboard for a significant portion of the game highlights the potential risks faced by stadiums and arenas relying heavily on complex audiovisual systems. One of the things that came out of this, when they finally got it up and running, they were playing the Tampa Rays. Yeah. The system got up and running again, and it showed the Rays logo, to which the fantastic fans of the New York Mets started to boo the tech team, I guess, or the board, or the team. I don't know who they were booing. They're Mets fans. Britt,
still a step up from being a Bears fan.
Hey, you know what? I am an unabashed Bears fan. I will always be a Bears fan, and that's it. They do stink. Britt, you just went through a pretty high profile commencement. Nothing happened. There was no fails with Britt and her team. But how do you come back from a fail like this? How do you recoup, whether that's internally, right, but also externally to the outside world, that yes, we know what we're doing and we can solve these issues?
Well, I think it starts with how you approach it in that moment. How quickly are you down? Can you fix it quickly? Can you find an alternative solution quickly? Like, how capable are you of keeping things moving in that moment? And then recognizing after the fact how you're able to move forward, because anything that goes wrong is an opportunity to learn something. So what did you learn from it? Both in terms of staffing, what you were capable of doing in the moment, why it went wrong, what to do next time, how to prevent it from happening later. And I personally have never had a large scale failure like that. I'm knock on wood. So I don't know that what the final step is in terms of the people who experienced the failure. I imagine something like an issuing of an apology or a statement, might be appropriate depending on what happened. I have never had to do that personally.
Bradford, this is the second major one of a video system in the last 12 months. The first one happened at the Rams Stadium. Thankfully, it was in preseason, but the complete failure of that system. How do you, here's the thing. I am old enough to remember redundancies, right? Mm-hmm. And, way back 100 years ago when I was in radio, we had like 3 different transmitters and 3 different receivers for a single broadcast. How do you prevent something like this in an age where everything is IP based? What are those redundancies?
Well, I want to be careful here because I have been in Citi Field, in the stadium, played with the video board when it was being built.
So you're the reason it failed.
I am the reason it failed. I tried to hook up my Atari 2600 so I could play Tank on it, and it just crashed. But the reason I want to be careful about that is there are all sorts of rules that not everyone's aware of about the video board, the size of the image, what type of image you're allowed to show when a baseball player is at bat. You're not allowed to have a moving image behind the pitcher when he goes to pitch, which makes sense. But those are some of the rules that not everyone's aware of that fall into that. So some of these items are actually game operation staffing issues and not necessarily hardware or system issues. It's knowing all those little rules and making the right decisions, or at times making the wrong decision and watching things trickle. I have had projects fail at this level multiple times. I've had, MetLife Stadium went silent during their first public event for football because the fire alarm went off. Everyone blamed the audio system, and I was like, no, audio system did exactly what it was supposed to. So I'm not going to be the one to say, oh, it was the video board. For all we know, they could have gotten a spurious command saying, you need to do this.
Yeah.
I am going to say that the fact that it's IP based does not make it more complex. The fact that it's complex is a result of technology and what we're all expecting, because I can do OBS at home, open broadcast studio, and do my own video production, and the churches and the colleges and can all do that. So the bar has been raised. The problem is all too often the staffing is not always trained well, or there is a flaw beyond the operator's control. The example I use is I had a project for a major casino that took the casino down for various reasons, none of which were my fault. But the network switch that was provided by others and maintained by others had a problem. Same thing happened at Lucas Oil Stadium. Same thing happened at Edmonton Airport. Of its audio and video have a different quality of service. I can go through all these different places. It's happened during a U.S. Open where there's been noise during play in Flushing Meadows, since we're talking about that. So the bigger issue is, as Britt said, how do you recover? How do you deal with it? How do you move forward from it is the key. And one of the big things is admit it happened and explain why it happened, but don't explain it in we had an AES cryptographic key not work properly, so our flip then flopped. And no, just be like, we had a blue screen of death and we had to restart the computer, and we all know Windows then had to do an update. Almost everyone would kind of go, okay, I get it. Now, why the default image was the opposing team could be some archaic rule I don't know of. Who's at bat? It might have been the last image they had in the still store. There's all sorts of things. But it's happened at hockey games. There's blue screens of death that we've all seen at airports.
Yep.
It has nothing and this is going to sound a little counterintuitive. It has nothing to do with the fact it's a video board. Okay. It has to do with content delivery and management systems. The fact it's a video board just means it's huge, like it's a 16K display. But it's still just a huge display you have to get your content to.
This happened in May, right? And I am not a huge baseball fan, but I generically know that baseball starts in April, right? The 1st of April, typically, sometimes the end of March. That means that this team had been on the job for over a month with this system.
It's not always one team.
Okay, that's not always one team.
There could be multiple.
My question is still valid.
That's fine. I just want to make sure you have all the boundary conditions.
How do you train these folks? How do you train your customers to where they feel comfortable, right? And where is that handoff, and where is that baton passing to where you feel good about it and they feel good about it, right?
I don't think if I had to do a train the trainer model, I still wouldn't feel comfortable, because I wouldn't feel that the trainer that I was training trained the other trainees in the way it should be, right? So I don't know if it's what that answer is. You know, do you repeatedly train people where you're going back in on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, on, you know, daily basis when it's something so significant like that? I don't know. But the other thing you look at it is, like Bradford said, if the blue screen of death showed up, I don't think we'd be talking about this. I think it was because everybody that has some type of a computer understands what that is.
Yeah.
If the screen was dark and there was nothing there, then yes. And also, you're right. Maybe, who knows? Maybe somebody tripped over a cable. Are all the cables the way they're supposed to be? Is there cable management then? I mean, I'm in AV. If you look at my office, there's cables all over the place. So if my dog comes in and happens to, you know, get a hold of it with a toy, something's getting unplugged. So did that happen? So, but the default, I will be honest, when I watched the video and I looked at it, I seriously thought the Raise logo was a Photoshop in, because it was so clean, so clear. It's pretty.
Yeah.
So I thought, you know, did that really happen? But you do see it. But yeah, that you know, like Bradford says, is it the last image that was loaded? Is it the default of whatever the last thing was, the last person at that? Who knows? But you've got to train, I think, in a way that's going to get multiple hands touch. But once it's installed, once it's done, as the installer, integrator, salesperson, whoever, we don't have control of that.
Yeah.
It's now put on that team of people who's in charge of managing the scoreboard, running everything. And, you know, like you said, maybe it was the guy called off sick. You don't know, but their public announcement of what happened, I think we all would feel better. You know, like you said, we tripped over a cable. Sorry.
My bad. Well, that is going to do it. I appreciate y'all. All of us will be heading sometime between now and the time this posts. We'll be heading to Orlando, except for Bradford because he lives there. But we're all heading to InfoComm. We'll talk about that in a second. Brent, very nice to meet you. In this context, Brett and I have talked previously, but never on AVWeek. So very nice to have you on. How do people connect with you and your podcast?
Thank you. It was great being here. So my podcast is Brave Space. It's hosted by Higher Ed AV Media, so you can find it on their website. It's also available anywhere you listen to podcasts, so iTunes, Spotify, etc. I personally am on Twitter under Brave Brit, and I am also on LinkedIn with my name, Britt Yenser.
All right, very good. Jennifer Weaver, very nice to have you. How do people connect with you or Starin?
So you can connect with me through Starin's website and dialing directly into the number. They can pull me up. On LinkedIn, I'm Jennifer Weaver. On Twitter, I'm J Weaver Starin. And then if you guys look me up, you can ping me, call me, email me. But I will definitely be heading to InfoComm on Sunday. And please, if you guys are there, stop by and see the Starin booth. We are booth number 2926.
All right, very good. Mr. Ben, thank you, sir. How do people connect with you or the Advisist group?
We do not have Twitter. We do not have Facebook. We do not have Instagram. Remember ringing the privacy stuff? Yeah, I'm that guy. So advisist.com, or you can find me at Bradford for those you on Mastodon, Bradford.Ben at audio-video.tech. I actually have a Mastodon server open to all. You can also find me on LinkedIn. You also can typically find me lampooning Tim and the Bears. And I will be at InfoComm. My schedule is online if you actually want to make an appointment for me to come visit you, because going the other way seemed to be really difficult. And also, I will have some of these there. It's a pride pin for those of you who are not watching the video. for those who want. I also fully understand those who don't come to Florida, as I said in my impassioned post. And look forward to seeing you there. Look forward to seeing all these lovely people in person. And Tim, I'm looking forward to you buying me dinner on Saturday night.
I think I can handle that. So, because I already have an appointment with Bradford. For Tim Albright, do not follow me on the Twitters, because as Bradford said, I will do nothing but talk about the Bears. But go by the website if you would, please, AVNation.tv. That's AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. Brand spanking new EdTech with our friends over there. Aaron Mayer Moran is the host of that, so that is brand new. But we will also be heading to InfoComm 14th through the 16th of June. All kinds of content coming around there. My day job is I'm head of marketing for CTI out of St. Louis, and we also have a booth, 4101. If you are an end user, Bradford and Jennifer, I am terribly sorry, but if you are an end user, you can get a shot at $10,000 if you come by the booth, 4101. Tell them I said hey, because I have to do my job that week and I won't be around the booth. But some fantastic people will. You throw some bags. If you get a hole, you get your name in the bucket. Plus, we are given $10 for every hole that is gotten to St. Jude. Is our charity this year. St. Jude's been a charity of ours for a long time at CTI, and we're just going to continue that tradition. So 4101 is where we will be. A bunch of parties. Obviously, the AVNation tweet up happens 4 to 6 on Wednesdays. You can check out avnation.tv and register there. We have a party at the Ice Bar on Tuesday, and we also have Tech on Tap from CTI on Wednesday and Thursday. So check all that out and more at avnation.tv. That's avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. As all the time we have for AV Week.